Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review on a 2001 CR500 that's based on a 94 model. So thank you to Shane Cooper for borrowing me his bike, and I really appreciate it and I've enjoyed testing on it. So first off, I'm going to talk about the general setup of the bike and what I actually thought. So as you already know, it's a 2001 CR500 based off a 94 model. So it has the 43mm forks in it, so it can be raced in a pre-95 class at the Vipers. So the general things on the bike, such as the sprockets and the brakes, are actually all stock. The bars he's running are 996 rentals, which I personally really like because I'm a small person. I usually run a flatter bend of bars, so it's quite good for me because I actually usually run the James Stewart bend of rentals, which is quite similar to these ones. The engine has been modified to race Fink, so what they've done is modify the engine to make it more mid to top power, but in saying that, it still has really good bottom end, and I quite like the response it had out of the corner. So it wasn't too snappy, but it had the torque you need to really get on going through the ruts and through flat off camber corners, which I really liked. It actually feels like it has a smaller frame compared to modern bikes. I'm not quite sure if it's a setup of the seat or something, but the frame itself actually felt small and close to the ground. I noticed this because I could actually touch the ground on this bike compared to my normal bikes, which I have to have lowered. So this bike having pegs that are high up on the frame was quite good for me because I was actually able to get higher off the seat while I was riding and standing up. The seat on this bike is obviously quite a lot bigger, both in width and length. You feel the width a bit when you first sit on it because your legs are more wide compared to the new bikes that are much more narrow seats, and it's actually quite soft, which I didn't mind because when I was cornering I felt like I sunk into the bike bed, obviously because of the softer seat, and it made it feel like it cornered quite well. The general suspension setup on this bike was quite soft, which was really good for me, but it might not actually suit heavier riders as well. And I noticed the forks were pushed up quite a lot. They were nearly hitting the bars, which I personally didn't like at the start because going down steep hills at Monza that were quite fast, I felt like I was almost going not over the bars all the time, but I was getting thrown forward a lot because the bike felt like it was quite nose down and nose heavy at the start. But I pushed the forks through and it fixed it, and it made the bike level out, and it was actually made the suspension feel a lot better for me down the hills because it didn't feel quite as exaggeratedly as soft down the hills. It felt quite plush, and I felt like I was able to brake harder and attack the track more easier. And the only other thing is the bike has a Pro Circuit system on it at the moment. So next I want to talk about what it's like to ride. So first of all, what it's like to start. So most of you guys would know that there's quite a knack to starting a CR500, especially when it's cold. You have to get you have to rock it back and forth, lean it over so the fuel gets in the carby, and obviously you can't just kick it like a normal bike, and I was doing that completely wrong when I first started doing it. I was trying to start it like my two-stroke, and that was completely wrong, and it felt like I was going to break my leg trying to start it. But once I got the technique correct, where you go down with your foot all the way till you feel the compression, come back up all the way and give it a really firm start, it was actually quite a good bike to start, especially when it was warm. I kicked the bike basically first kick every time, which was actually really good. I thought it might give me trouble starting if I was to stall it or drop it out on the track, but it didn't at all. So once you've had it started once in the morning and completely cleared it out and it's not cold anymore, even if you leave the bike sitting for a while, you just turn the choke on and usually first kick every time. And I'm not the biggest person, I really couldn't touch the ground the best, and I was still able to kick it over quite well. Now for the power of the bike, I know there's quite a lot of talk behind 500s and the power of the bike because obviously I have got quite a lot of grunt. I know quite a few people before I actually rode the bike were like to me, oh my god, you're riding a 500, you're crazy, you've got so much power, you're gonna kill yourself. And I was like, I actually didn't know what to think about that, but when I rode it, I went in pretty sensibly. I knew that what gears I wanted to ride in. I knew how I wanted the bike to feel, which actually helped me out a lot. Some people who don't have as much experience don't know how they want a bike to feel. I knew I wanted to be in the torque and have smooth power, so I purposely chose mainly third gear in corners and fourth gear down straights. So the bike for me was actually quite predictable. I felt like I knew what I was always going to do. I knew when the power was going to come on. It was quite easy to corner, actually, kind of almost like a four-stroke in some senses, where you could have it in a higher gear and it has the torque you need to pull you from the start of the corner with just a little bit of throttle. It doesn't just snap on. It is quite predictable in that sense. Obviously, if you have it in a low gear, like second in a bigger corner, if you snap it on, it might punch a bit. Obviously, knowing when to shift on these bikes is important, because when you have it in the torque and the meter of the power, the bike revs so nicely. It doesn't snap, it doesn't bounce around when you're hitting bumps. But I have found out through testing that if you do get to the higher revs of the bike, which most people generally don't, it does start to shake and move around on you a bit more, almost like not necessarily vibrate, but the bike does start to act up a bit and get a bit wild, you can say. Obviously, if you're one of those people who want to rev it, ride it in the higher power, you have to be prepared to hold on to it because it's got quite a lot of power. But I would recommend riding it mid, obviously low to mid power, because you get it. That's mainly where the performance of these bikes are and where you can ride it most effectively, and obviously be more efficient on yourself. So next is the handling. I actually quite like the handling on this bike. I found it was really plush. It felt really good on the brakes. In a sense that it was plush, but I didn't feel like it was going to bottom out at any time. It took the harshness off the bumps but kept firm at the bottom, which is what I really like when I'm trying to brake aggressively and come into corners. It turned really well, the bike. You would think that pushing the forks down, it would kind of get rid of the turning because you're changing the fork angle, but it actually didn't affect it too much. The only thing my dad did to this bike before I did the day of testing on it was just set up the sag on the rear shock just to make sure it was pretty good for me. But we left everything else, the forks, as they were, which is actually how the bike comes from stock. I have previously ridden a modern framed 500, and I'm honestly going to say I prefer the old frame. What I found with the new alloy frames compared to the steel frames was they actually vibrate so much more. You wouldn't think they do. You think the old frames, they're not so much technology and not as developed as the new frames are, but this being the rigid steel it doesn't vibrate that much at all. Like every now and then you can feel your hands vibrate if you get in the higher revs, but I noticed with the new frame that my feet were actually shaking on the pegs. So they were similar bikes, they're both CR500, so the power was very comparable. It wasn't like comparing apples to oranges. It's basically the same bike, but the frame, it just vibrated so much. Both my feet and my hands were vibrating so much that when I got off the bike, I was still like almost, my fingers were like tingling. I felt like I was still shaking when I hopped off the bike. If I was to personally choose a frame or what style of bike I would ride, I would honestly choose the old style 500 because of how much less it vibrates, and also the feel of the bike actually felt really good for me. It felt like it fit the bike really well, and obviously this bike was designed for this engine, so I felt like it's the way it really should feel. If I was to have a 500 with the new frame, I would obviously want to do something to it. I know some people get their frames filled to take the vibration and the shock out, and I personally would probably want to get that done because if you're trying to go hard and your bike's always vibrate under your feet, it will weed out so much quicker. There's just a couple of things I noticed about this bike that weren't necessarily negatives, but just things I noticed compared to my modern bike. And the first thing was that the brakes on this thing fade. Now obviously it's an older bike, so I'm not going to expect it to have brilliant brakes. The front brakes are actually pretty good all day, but I did notice that the rear brakes did fade after about 10 minutes of riding. So basically what happens is that it works good for the first, few laps, probably 5 laps, and then I'll go to push it down coming into a corner or something, and the brake would just fall through. So obviously, and every now and then it kind of caught me off guard, especially if you're trying to ride the bike harder and the brake just falls through. It does kind of give you a bit of a shock, but obviously I just adapted my riding to that, and when it did happen I was just aware of it and changed my riding accordingly. And after a little while, when you stop using your brakes, it slowly starts to come back again, which is not a problem. The front brakes were good all day. I only noticed in the last ride, especially because I was pushing quite hard because I was very comfortable on the bike by that point, that when I was trying to enter the corners harder towards the end of my 30-minute moto, that a few corners I came in hard and the brakes just weren't working the same. Like, the bike just rolled so much easier. Like, I'd pull them in and I wouldn't pull up for the corner where I should have. That's the only thing I noticed. And obviously it's older brakes, so I don't expect it to do the same as it does, say, on my 144 252 stroke, because obviously 500s are harder to slow down on entry into the corners. But I think if you had an oversized brake system on this, it'd be so great to ride with. The second thing I noticed with this CR500, it was so great to ride in the hard pack kind of power conditions. I could control it quite easily, but when the track got wet, that's when it got quite difficult on the bike, just because it has so much torque, and me not being the heaviest person, like I'm about 64 kilos, so compared to the average man or something, I'm quite a lot lighter. So obviously with that kind of torque to the wheel with my weight in the wet, it was just wheel spinning so much. And I've had quite a bit of experience with wheel spin on my 2 stroke and stuff, but this is just something else. The way this bike wheel spins, it's a bit more, I wouldn't say uncontrollable, but it just this thing can wheel spin. So my overall thoughts on this bike are, I really enjoyed riding this CR500, and I would definitely ride it again. It's a bike I would ride for fun and even possibly race in the future if I wanted to, or if I got asked to, because I feel like with the setup and how friendly and comfy the bike is, I'm quite capable of doing so, and I feel like this is quite a friendly bike for other people to race as well. It's an easy bike to ride, it's comfortable, it handles well. I feel like this bike would suit a lot of people. And I do hope to post a video on my YouTube channel of myself riding this bike soon. Thank you for watching my video today. Please hit the like button to let me know that you enjoyed this video today, and subscribe to my channel if you want to keep up to date with my new videos and content. But that's all for today, guys, and thank you for watching my video. I'll see you guys next time.